going on, everybody? You are live with Osiris. Welcome to the Author's Lounge. The world is filled with storytellers, and I, along with my guests, are here today in the Author's Lounge to help educate and inspire the young generation of writers and creators. Now, my guests are professionals in publishing, writers from a wide range of formats, and successful entertainers. They will provide beneficial advice on what to do and what not to do on your path to success. So, without further ado, I'll present to you our next guest. Let's go. We have a wonderful guest here who I reached out to based off of a post that he created, indicating that he had never done this before. Well, let me rephrase that. 'Cause he has been involved in virtual calls, but never been a focal point. And he has wonderful things to offer to this platform. So let's get right into it. Our guest is a teacher. He is an author. He is a poet, and he is also a philosopher. Yeah, there's many other things that he has, but the philosopher is the one big thing I got to focus on because I haven't knowingly spoken to a philosopher before. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Rex Eloquent. Good afternoon, good sir.
Hello, everyone.
How you doing today?
I'm doing okay. How about yourself?
I feel good. I'm feeling good, man. I'm grateful for like anytime I get to do this, and anytime I have opportunities to be able to like converse with others who have a shared vision and wanting to help out the youth. I'm all for it. And now, their vision is always different based off their experience, but the
Hmm.
goal is always the same in helping people. So I'm gonna open the floor up for some
Okay.
interesting
I'm
questions.
excited. Let's do it.
Yes, sir. So, philosopher, how did you be? What got you into like philosophy? What can you actually break down what that is and what what exactly you do as a philosopher?
Okay, I can. We can start with how I got into it, or we can start with what I think philosophy is, because I think both are very important.
Okay,
But
yeah, I'll let you decide.
okay, well, what I think philosophy is, I think this is a more important question. What I think philosophy is often you get it. Like if you ask a philosopher what a philosophy is, you'll get 100 different answers. You'll get a different answer for every philosopher. But I think it mainly has to do with thinking, the question, and the answer. So it's not just the question; it's the answer. And so one of my predecessor, actually, a philosopher by the name of Walter Kaufmann, a German American, made excellent books, wrote a lot of scholarly articles and whatnot. But he says his definition, and I take it. I take his definition is that the role of the philosopher is sometimes they introduce new perspectives. They're highly creative, and they often can point out where they think society can do better. And if that's the case, they give new solutions to older problems. Or they reponder questions and say, hey, no, this is important for us as a society and for people to ask. Like, this is, like, some of the questions hit really hard, too. Like, not all of philosophy is looking at the meaning of life, for instance. But that is a sliver of philosophy. And, it turns out life it might not have a meaning. And that's a tough pill to swallow, but that's something you need to philosophize and come to on your own. So I really do think philosophy is just the introduction of new perspectives. And and a lot of it has like a social element to it, where they want to offer solutions, because obviously philosophers, I feel, do not just sit in their ivory tower contemplating existence and not sharing it with anybody. Every philosopher still writes, or most of them still have their name. They write books, they socialize with people. They're people too. But I think it is the highly creative element and thinking that is part of philosophy. That is my answer, I would say.
I like it. No, I like the breakdown. So, on that, the follow up is what got you into becoming a philosopher?
Well, and now I realize that everyone does philosophize to an extent, but in my particular story, in high school I took my first philosophy class, and it was very interesting on it. We didn't make much headway. We didn't get past old Plato, but I kind of receded for a bit, and I didn't read that much for many years. But during the pandemic, I think I fell back into it again. I fell back into just reading history, poetry, you know, on the nature of aesthetics, things regarding art in general, and that's how I jumped into philosophy. I kind of stumbled onto this world, and I'm like, okay, here's the history of philosophy. I didn't know who Kant was. I didn't know who Schopenhauer was. I didn't know the 20th century French tradition, like with Derrida, Deleuze. I didn't know any of them. And from the lockdown onward, I just started educating myself, and I started writing my own experiences and writing my own personal thoughts. And I'm like, wow, this is really what a philosopher does. They they just have they try to be original. They try to think around a subject, and oftentimes they write it down. And that's how it, that's how it kind of snowballed into here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you became a student of the game, quite literally, going way back in time with just some of the historical great philosophers. And you had mentioned Plato. So I'm not going to pretend to know everyone that you named, but it sounded, it just rolled off of the tongue so well that I can believe what you're saying, right? And but just in a little bit that I know about people, like Plato, is that there was an obsession there to be great at what needed to be learned. And it seems that you've taken a similar approach and wanted to be a great philosopher. You dove deep into educating
Mhm.
yourself and learning what needed to be learned. And so, you mentioned something else prolific as well, that you wrote down a lot of things. Now, I
Mhm.
mentioned, earlier in the introduction about you being, I don't know if I introduced you as an author. I think I did. I can't quite remember. If I didn't, you're also an author. If I did, this is just repeated information. But as an author, right, kind of bridging the gap here, but what exactly do you write about when it comes to the books that you get published?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I try to touch on many bases because I do think, like, uh, cliche response from a philosopher, but philosophy is cross disciplinary. So it does touch poetry, it does touch history, it does touch even mathematics. And I myself have tried to explore other avenues. Like, I've written a fiction book. Whether it's any good or not, you can tell me. I feel like
Ah,
the artist often is like their biggest critic. Um, I've written to poetry because I found, sometimes you just get flashes of inspiration and you just have to write something down and you're like, oh, this is poetical. I didn't even mean for it to be poetical, but yeah. And actually, I wrote my first poetry book a few months back by the name of Avalon Heart, and it started like that exactly. One day I was taking a walk outside. I just started writing down things, and it came to be a book. Pretty simple. And
mhm.
I would say my focus though is more into like philosophical history and the philosophical questions and perspectives. So, like the philosophers I mentioned earlier, a lot of them would give like systematic worldviews of like their universe. So,
Yeah.
like Plato, for instance, thought that this world was mainly illusory. Like you can't trust appearances, but there is a real world, and that is the world of the forms, of the Platonic forms. Now, that's where you get knowledge from, and you can kind of get there like you can get inklings of it from reason. But the world was still ways off, and this was the world of shadows. Like you've heard of the myth of the cave. That's one of the biggest talking points in Plato. I think the role of the philosopher is exactly that too. They give their own
Yeah.
perspective, and they try to give, hey, look, this is what reality might be. This is what it may not be, and here's what I think we got wrong. And in my own
Absolutely.
writings, I try to take that element and I try to explore different avenues of thought. So I can focus on a soul question. I can focus on what I think we're getting wrong at the current times, and I'll offer my own perspective. And here are my values. Here, what are they good for? What are the limits of them? Uh, yeah, there's a lot. I do kind of branch myself out. Cause you never know if you're gonna strike gold. If you strike literary gold or philosophical gold until you try, you go out there and reach it. And so that's what I've been trying to do. That is my project. And of course, being great is like it is partially a motivator, but at the same time, I feel like my focus on my art is really what drives it. It's the passion. Like
Hmm.
I feel like most people wouldn't turn to philosophy just because a lot of them don't see the value in it, the monetary value. Let's be real.
Right, right.
A lot of people would just pass it over, but to that, I'd say you use philosophy in your everyday life and you don't know it. So I
No, for
think it is
sure.
deserving of attention. Like
Hmm.
ethical questions or questions of aesthetics. So, if I
Yeah.
like that plant in the background of yours, like
Yeah.
that's an aesthetic question. Or if I say he shouldn't have done that, or I think that's wrong, you shouldn't do that. That's ethical. We can talk about that. We can have a discussion.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so I try to go into, I'm very broad when it comes to my writings. To answer your
Yeah.
original question,
No,
apologies
for
for going
sure.
off a little bit, but
No, no, you're good. I think certain things warrant like a really deep explanation. I mean, and as a philosopher, one who thinks heavy much has a lot to say, and that is not a bad thing whatsoever. I'm more curious too, right? And the impact of like people. Well, I don't think you can truly, not you, but the proverbial you, right? I don't believe like one can truly understand the impact that they've made on people's lives ever in their lifetime. I think there's an idea there that they can understand that I know I've made an impact, but I don't know to what extent.
Mhm.
And so, like with storytelling, right? Like with writing, with even being some sort of a public figure, it comes with a certain responsibility. And I think that if you even put that into words, like in sort of into a story, it turns into something that lasts well beyond your years on being alive.
Oh
So, like
yeah.
my next question, yeah, and like my next question is to you, right? Like we had mentioned teacher. Um, I have a special place for teachers and what teachers go through. I know you've tutored and you've helped out, but what was what did you learn, right, as being a teacher that you apply to being a storyteller?
Oh, that's an excellent question too. But I think you have to be willing to take the plunge, as in
Hmm.
teaching others and in storytelling. So first off, I think you need the confidence to be able to, like, the courage, I should say, to even get into it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't think you could be an effective teacher if you're always self-doubting, if you're always questioning your own work or the validity of what you know. Because I always do believe people know more than they let on.
Hmm.
There's this kind of air of humbleness around them, and I think to an extent that is good. But when it comes to being a teacher or a tutor, I feel like you really need to be assertive in these things and say, "Oh no, here's what I have. Here's the knowledge I picked up over my years, and I'm gonna attempt to give that to you." And in the same sense, the storytelling works the same way. Like what is it, like the oral tradition of storytelling? Like in Africa, for instance, that has survived for thousands of years, and it's nothing like ours. It's nothing like
Yeah.
writing down. Like it's been passed down through word of mouth, and it is also kind of a form of life to be honest, because it could be the stories of your ancestors. It could be this myth, or it became myth and it was actual history, and it's an anthropological line downwards. It's just, if I had to give advice regarding that, I would say have the courage to do so. And you're right, there is a responsibility to it. And I believe part of that responsibility is also doing your own research and making sure you put out high quality work, or you try to work around a student's needs or whoever you're telling. So it goes with the same with telling a story.
Hmm.
Are you going to tell a story to a brick wall? I don't think you are. Like,
Yeah.
you need to first know your student. You need to have the courage to speak your mind and speak your story, and then you can work from there. It's a process too. I don't expect anyone to get it right on the first try,
For
but
sure.
that's what I think. Responsibility, especially with getting your facts right, getting, you know, passing down, or even passing down your life wisdom.
Hmm.
The courage to even do so, because you're not going to be a good teacher if you don't have faith in your own skills, right?
Right.
And then you have to know your student. Who are you talking to? Do they want to
Hmm.
listen? How can you make them listen? Like, for instance, I believe education for the most part is the student always has to be willing to listen, or it's going to go in one ear and out the other. They're
Hmm.
not going to learn. Like, they may be able to pass a test or something, but it's gone in a week or two.
Right.
So you have to be engaging with them enough to where they pick it up and they'll remember this experience for the rest of their lives. Otherwise,
Hmm.
what are you doing? I think that's the point of a teacher, not to just get, like, have the student score highly on a multiple choice test or something. They need to
Right.
know the subject.
Like teachers teach, teachers teach, teachers teach, but also I think in it, right now, I'm not a teacher, so I'm not giving any sort of advice on being a teacher. But just as a student to a teacher, it's always great to have a connection with your students. Like if I'm going to, if I want the best brought out of me, I would expect the teacher to be able to be skillful enough to bring out that best.
Mhm.
Some teachers, unfortunately, aren't as proficient as others. There's a
Of
threshold
course.
depending on where you go to. I'm not going to even sit here and say that public schools don't necessarily have the best type of teachers in comparison to like to private schools.
Mhm. Yeah.
There may be teachers in that public school setting
Yeah.
that have the same repertoire as one in a private school setting,
Oh, yeah, I agree.
or even a university, like let's say Harvard University versus just like a community college. There might be scholar level teachers there that could be on par with Harvard, but they just chosen here. So to me, the
Yeah.
reason why I bring things up is it is not a matter of where you are, but
Mhm.
well, let me rephrase it. It's not a matter of like what organization you are under, but who you are as a person. You can be the best version of yourself anywhere you go. And being able to really hone in deep into somebody and pull out the best of them should not be dependent upon of what school you go to or like what organization you fall under. I believe it should truly be within yourself to help people bring out the best versions of themselves, regardless of where you are. And it sounds like you have much of that
Oh,
same
yeah.
thought process.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. I've met people from, or I should say, I've talked to people from very prestigious institutions, and I've gotten more from talking out of my friend who just decided to self-educate. And
Right.
a lot of people do. It may sound rude, so apologies for that. But a lot of people do write off of their merit alone, and they lack
Mhm.
character. So what does it matter if you went to Harvard and you taught at Harvard if you're not a good teacher?
Right.
Because going to places like that does not automatically mean that you're qualified to teach or that your character is suiting for the students. Because some people, there are degrees to this. Some people are better or worse teachers than others, and
Hmm.
I had to lay it on like that. But I like so, like you were saying, we could have like a high school teacher who is on par with like someone of an institution in higher learning, and they could
Right.
equally teach as great. And the only difference is where they're at. I totally agree with that point of view because I think it more has to do with your character and how you approach things more than
Hmm.
where you went to school, who taught you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you think of the value. I was listening to like 50 Cent had said this, like and he may have received this from someone else, but the
Mhm.
logic of a water bottle, right? And the water bottle is water in a water bottle, but the value of that water bottle changes depending on the venue. So like a water
Yeah.
bottle at convenience store versus like let's say like a basic gas station versus going to a supermarket versus it being at an airport versus it being at a movie theater. And like
Mhm.
the same bottle varies in price depending on where you are.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think that and to that logic, in that notion, the water itself, granted the water doesn't talk to itself, but in this example, the water knows its value. It knows its value and its value changes depending on where it goes. But well, sorry, I said that wrong. The water is valuable, but depending on where it is, it makes it more valuable. But the water itself knows that it is a valuable source. So, in the same notion, we spoke about the teacher. The teacher knows his value or knows his or her value. However, depending on where they go, there's like a certain expectation of that
Oh
value
yeah. For
that
sure.
needs to be, needs to be exceeded. So, not to get derailed or anything, but like, it's interesting when you speak to authors because it's not always just about the book. It's not always just about writing the story, as it is the journey of writing the story. So, like for you, how many books have you written, and what is your overall message in writing books?
Might seem cliche, but I think overall you have to strive to just be yourself. Be authentic as you can, even if it is a mask. Like I'll bring up my predecessor once again, Walter Kaufman. He said, "The mask of art can be beautiful, even if the person behind it isn't." So
Hmm.
you can make an art that far surpasses even yourself, and you wouldn't even know. You wouldn't even know. It could be that way in the future. It could be like a Rembrandt or a Goya or something along those lines. But I think in either case you would have to be strived for authenticity and originality. Like, you shouldn't try to, like, maybe you can pick up some nice tricks from other people, or you can learn from them because we are inheritors of the past, regardless. But I think you should take your inheritance and do what you want with it. Make your own thing out of it. That way you can leave a legacy. That way people can look up to you in the future as like a good role model, an original thinker, a person who inspired others. I think that is what mainly should be the author's goal, but or a writer's goal in general. But I recognize that not all of us are the same. Not every writer is the same either, and not every writer writes for the same thing. So that is the way I tend to view things. That is what I take as my my praxis and my theory. But I know every writer is going to have their own little, what motivates them. I actually, fun fact, I knew a writer who, he became a writer simply because he used to write on the bus coming home from work. And that was that was it. It was no other greater message behind that. He just says, I like writing and I did it in my free time. I discovered it one day and he just continued, and that was it. And it's equally as profound, and I think it is respectable as well.
For sure. And was intriguing about what you're saying, right? About your friend doing it on the bus. Um, some people just have that bug naturally. And like what is it? What is it? It is an intuitive thought, and you are constantly thinking about whatever it is that you're thinking about. It's like a desire, or you see somebody in a position that you are immediately drawn to. At least that was me with storytelling. What I really love about doing this show is being able to talk to all types of people. Like with you, like ranging from like philosophers, and so I initially only thought it was just going to be authors, like just writers, and that was it. Just like writers. I wasn't specific, but ask the universe and you shall receive. I said writers, and it gave me all kinds of writers. It wasn't just authors. It was people who do nonfiction and
Yeah.
fiction and screenwriters and playwrights. And I talked to a psychic recently,
Oh,
and
interesting.
that was incredible. Yourself as a philosopher, I spoke to another young lady, and she's an American Sign Language educator.
Oh, okay.
And
Wow.
so, and you talk to producers and directors, and you just don't know what you're going to get when you ask
Right.
for it. So, like, I bring that up because, like, you had mentioned earlier that some things kind of you really. I'm going to summarize what you said, but pretty much you don't know where your own work, how far it's going to bring
Oh,
you,
yeah. You
and
don't.
like yeah, and like this here, I really feel is a treasure to people because of the amount of of just solid information that we are collectively providing. I want to ask you another question though, man. Like,
Okay.
um,
Ask away.
I yeah. So one, at what point, like, at what age, or not? I won't say age specifically, but like, at what point in your life did you realize that, I think philosophy is my calling. I want to be a philosopher.
Yeah, I'd have to hark back to the time during the lockdown when I really started to self-educate and buy books, read them, really absorb them. During that time, I was thinking, because I had just finished getting a degree at the local college here. I actually had went to a private college before then, but it wasn't for me. But here in San Antonio, I started to self-educate, started reading my own books, and I thought to myself, where was my life gonna go? Like, I originally had a plan where I was just gonna become an accountant or some business related. That's actually one of my degrees, business. But really, when I began to step into the world of the humane arts, it just kind of melted away. It became more than a hobby. It was a hobby at first, and then it became more than a hobby. And then one day I was sitting in my bed and I realized, you know, why don't I just reach into this fully? Why don't I bridge the gap between it being a hobby and it being a lifetime? And I think that's where it started, and that was already half a decade ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
So
what joy followed? Like, what joy followed once you absolutely say, you know what, I'm doing this for real. How fulfilling was that for you?
oh, it was more fulfilling than I could have ever imagined, because for the longest time I didn't feel like I had anything to me. But once I discovered this, I thought, look, I'm gonna carve my name out here. I'm gonna carve my name out for everyone and for myself, more importantly.
Hmm.
That's when I was walking around. I was living with a meaning.
Yeah.
Became my that became basically my life. I
Hmm.
it is income. It's not really comparable because before then I couldn't really say what I was even gonna do. I had a vague notion. Like I feel like most people in high school, for instance, we kind of push what they want to do on them. It's kind of like here you go for the rest of your life. You're gonna do this, so pick it. And I
Hmm.
was in that mode, and then I realized it doesn't have to be this way. I can make my own thing, and here it is. It happens to be with what I love, and there it goes. The joy is incomparable, I say. But it
You know,
was, yeah.
that's a beautiful thing to say, and I say that because you are free, right? You
Mhm.
are actually truly free mentally. Like even though we're in a world or we're in a country, right, where inflation still, at least as of the time
Mhm.
of this recording, 2025, this I would imagine will be outdated in terms of the inflation. But and I'm not a political person, so I'm not going to pretend
Mhm.
to talk politics. But I'm saying that times change, and but what is freeing is knowing what your purpose is and truly identifying what that looks like real will truly like help make the person live a more prosperous life. And it sounds like you're in that boat. You get to travel and write and do your thing,
Mhm.
and you know and at the end of it all, you're at peace with who you are. You're still contributing to the world.
Yeah,
And how now, do you have any siblings by any way, by any chance, any
I
siblings?
do actually. I have three other siblings.
Okay, and where do you fall on it? Are you the youngest, middle child, or are you the oldest?
I'm the second youngest, actually.
Okay, and so is what you're doing, is philosophy a thing that generally runs in your family, or you're the first?
No, not at all, actually. My dad is a laborer, and my mother did some college, and she had a lucrative job for a while, but she's quite ill. I'm basically the only one who stepped into the humane arts.
Hmm.
There's another sibling of mine doing the business route, doing what I was originally planning on doing, but
Yeah,
it's so far just me.
yeah, and that's big time because I'm the same way. Like in my family, like my sister, she's an artist, and
Oh, okay.
we're all doing well for ourselves. But
That's good.
my
That's
sister,
good.
she's into art, and she was the first one who stepped out and actually like started doing something in the arts. I was always connected to it, and then I stepped out and I did my thing as well. But being a trailblazer is something that
Yeah.
you don't really think you are until you're in it and you look back and you're like, oh my, I'm like, I am the
Yeah.
example. Yeah, I am the person that you hear stories about that actually went out and made something of themselves completely separate from what I thought I needed to do, meaning yourself. And I think that's a wonderful it's wonderful to hear from you, Rex, man, with that. Now, any what are you working on now? What's your next project?
Right now, I'm actually stitching together a book of collected essays. So some have been previously published, and some I'm just, off the dome. I'm writing them, like when I take
Yeah.
walks or when I work out. I have an idea right here. I have an essay on
Mm.
this subject, and it's at 80 pages right now. I'm not sure
Oh,
how
nice.
much longer it's going to end up being, but I take the subjects. I actually have a little notepad, and I also have notes on my phone, and I write stories, I write essays right there, and I see
Hmm.
what I want to transfer over to the document, to the manuscript, and
Yep.
that's what I'm working on. Yeah,
Nice. So
it's coming
collection of
along.
poetry right now. It's coming along. Sorry, you said it's coming along.
Yeah, it's coming along. It's a collection of essays on
Oh,
various
that's gonna
subjects, so it's not just one thing. Yeah,
yeah.
there's one on AI, there's one on the intellectual, there's one on some philosophers, there's one on a
Hmm.
defense of ambiguity, which sounds a little odd because some philosophers are notorious ambiguous. But
Yeah,
I think some of them still have something to say. I don't fall for the illusion that just because you can't see it doesn't mean there's nothing there. Someone will get something out of it,
for
and
sure.
so I do make a defense, a little bit of that. And yeah, it's just a whole variety of subjects. It is coming along, yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so the last question I'll ask you before I let you go is thank you by the way
Hmm.
for sharing that information. I'm looking forward to
No problem.
hearing what that's going to turn out to be and reading your work. But last question is, if
Thank
people
you.
want to reach out to you, they want to pull get some wisdom from you, or just talk to you, or just want to be a supporter of your work. How can they reach you?
I have various social media that I've opened up, but I also have my email. My email's always open. I'm always looking forward to talking to people if I can, because I like to think philosophy is the one thing I know a little bit about at least. So
Yeah.
I can talk to them. I can, if I need to give them life wisdom, the very little I have, I can give it to them. I can tell them, hey, here's my perspective on this, or here, if you want to know about this, I can point you in the right direction. I can show you some authors, some writers, some philosophers that helped me in my self education. I guess
Oh,
this is really
perfect.
self education. If you're reading the works of others,
Yeah, yeah.
they've educated me plentifully. But I do have a social media. My handles are usually Rex Eloquens. It's just my name. I have a website that I still check often. I upload on. I have a Substack which is open. Also, actually has a new feature with DMs. Uh, I'm on there. Rex Eloquens, same thing. Various. I have a Beacons AI, a Linktree page. You should be able to find me if you just type my name on Google.
Now, how do you, for those that are only listening to the audio version of this, right? How do you, what's the handle? How do you spell? I mean, I know how to spell it, but for those who don't know how to spell it, how do you spell your handle of Rex Eloquent?
Okay, it's REXELOQUENS. It means it's a little haughty, but it means king speaker in Latin. So it is
Oh,
a little
that's
silly
beautiful.
name. It's not as
No,
it's not supposed to
no,
be a super serious name. So
it's the chosen
yeah,
one, man.
it's
Yeah,
yeah,
you're the chosen
it's a little
one.
silly
No,
name. Not to not to take it too seriously, but that is the pen name I chose. So uh,
no, good for you. Good for yes.
yeah,
Stand by it.
hmm
Stand by what you represent, and nothing but
hmm
greatness is going to come.
always.
Continue to pour. So, any closing remarks before I let you get out of here, sir?
Yeah, I think I'd like to say if there's a philosopher by the name of Karl Jaspers, I like what he has to say on philosophy, and he says, like I mentioned earlier to you, Osiris, he says everyone does philosophy, everyone comes to their ideas or they adopt ideas that are philosophical in nature, despite not knowing it. So I think it is worthwhile to look into your own ideas, to look into your beliefs, to look into what you can do better and why. Like that is something you have to figure out. I can't tell you that. I can't tell you what to do with your own life. I think you should come to it through reflection. But I do think philosophy is worthwhile, and it is also more valuable than people like to say it is, or they like to degrade it, or for some other reason, for some philosophical reason, I might add. But I would say it's okay to self educate yourself. It's okay to start reading books. It's okay to philosophize. I think it could do your life a lot good, even if I recognize that philosophy is not just self help. It is not self help. But can it help you? I would say it does. And it certainly helped
That's
me, to be honest, and helped me find my own calling. Yeah?
that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that wisdom and and also for coming on to the show. And it doesn't show that this is your first time. I mean, granted, it's not your first time, but your first time in this capacity. So thank you for
Thank
allowing
you
me
for
to be the
the nice words.
yes, sir. Thank you
Thank you for
for
having me
allowing
on.
me
Thank
like
you for having me on.
yeah. No, it's been a pleasure, and just allowing this platform to be the first experience that you had in this regard. You're going to continue to do great things, and I'm definitely going to stay in touch and looking forward to seeing more of the progression. But thank you so much, good sir. And hey, everyone, thank you all so much for taking the time
Okay.
out of your day to tune in to today's episode. It's been a pleasure and a real joy. And I got to talk to a philosopher, guys. Yeah. We
Thank
made
you
it.
all. Thank you, Osiris.
Yes, sir. Yes, of course. You all take care, and I'll catch you next time.